Okay, thank you. And welcome to the Wednesday, October 12th, 2022 Garrison Board of Education regular workshop meeting. Dusty, will you call the roll, please?
Jocelyn Apicello, David Gelber, Madeline Julian, Courtney McCarthy, Kent Schott, Matthew Spicer, Sarah Tormey.
Here. I'll lead the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, next up we have accept agenda and agenda changes. Do I have any recommended changes to this evening's agenda? Matt? Okay. All right, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please? Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Nays? Abstentions? Thank you. All right, next we move to our board communication and presentations. Up this evening, we have a high school choice discussion. So I'm going to preface this a little bit for our board members. As you may recall, and the public may recall, last spring when we were putting together our budget, we ran into some challenges with the tuition rates. We then approached our high school partners, which is Highland Falls, O'Neill High School, and Haldane, to discuss the rates. On the both budget votes, we had the ability for our district to enter up to a 5-year contract at an established rate. For O'Neill, that extends for all this year's 8th grade and subsequent years for 5 years. Haldane asked for a 4-year, and it only covered the students from the 8th grade graduates last year. So we do not have a rate currently for this year's 8th grade. We are currently in discussion with Haldane. I wish to thank Kent for going to the Haldane board meeting last night. I believe you spoke there and shared some of our challenges as a district and heard feedback and questions from their board as well. As part of this, however, we did start looking at other potential partners. We believe that, and everyone, we can have discussion on this, that high school choice is really important to our community. That's something we heard a lot during the budget presentations. So if we are unable to reach a deal with Haldane, we would like to have choice still available. So we started looking to see what else is out there, and that led us to Putnam Valley High School. We've had a few members go on tours there and can bring back, I went on a tour, Courtney and David, and can bring that back as well. Of course, we're still hopeful that we will reach a deal with Haldane. We've had great discussions so far. You can speak to last night's meeting. Hopefully it was very productive. And we have a long history with them. So this is not to say we wish to switch or replace. It would be to add on, basically, at this point, is our hope. However, we do expect our 8th graders to make choices per our contract with O'Neill this fall. So high schoolers will begin going on tours in November. And we want to have rates set in place so they don't go on a tour for a school we then may find out we can't afford. So that is our goal. So our goals for tonight's discussion is really to talk about, are we interested in exploring the third option? What are our thoughts on Putnam Valley for those of us who've seen it? Kent, if you share some of your feedback from last night's meeting, I'm sure the rest of the board would appreciate that as well. Carl and Joe, did I leave anything out?
No, the only thing I would add is the proposition that Sarah referred to back in the spring. We have the ability to enter into a 5-year contract. We did so with Highland Falls, Fort Montgomery. We have a 4-year with Haldane. We do not need, I checked with our attorneys, we do not need to go back out with a public proposition. We could simply amend it. If we reach agreement, we could amend it to reflect 5-year term. So that would be a simple vote of our board as well as the Haldane board to amend that current agreement.
And another question that will come up, because of course high school choice is linked very to our budget. And it's not budget season yet, but as we look ahead, is an override possible again in our community? I think we're going to, personally, I feel like I can say I don't think that's going to work. And it's not really a possibility. So we need to look at staying under the tax cap, which means keeping these contracts as low as possible. So I will also add that Putnam Valley has tentatively agreed to the same terms, meaning the same rate as O'Neill for 5 years. Should we have permission from the public to enter into that? And has waived costs for special education students as well. So it would be the exact same terms for students going to O'Neill versus Putnam Valley. All right, David, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have trouble restraining my enthusiasm for Putnam Valley High School. If I were writing a story about high schools for the New York Times Magazine, I'd do a story about Putnam Valley. It's an extraordinary place. I mean, they're doing things there that I don't think are being done in most high schools, certainly not in this area. They have an international, what they call an international baccalaureate program. And what they do is, what we saw was a school where kids are really encouraged to identify what they care about. And they get a huge amount of mentoring and supervision. And some of these kids are doing, the kids seem very engaged in it because it's a wonderful opportunity for them to create their own high school education and to learn how to write and to learn how to present, to learn how to actually do scientific work that is published in scientific journals. This is happening at Putnam Valley High School. I mean, I have to say, I've never seen a public high school like this before, ever. It's really remarkable. And I don't want to take up too much time. I think maybe Carl could explain better than I can what the International Baccalaureate program is.
Yeah, sure. What we learned is that Putnam Valley High School, I believe starting about 6 years ago, decided to change their curriculum, their approach to an IB program. It's interesting, it's right now at the high school, they're considering extending it down to the middle school. It's not required, they still offer AP courses. However, by grade 11, you can choose to be on the IB diploma track. It is student choice, and with that, it's a very rigorous program. Some would argue even more rigorous than AP, so it's not for every student. However, it is recognized, what we learned is many of our colleges in the area recognize it. Some, like Binghamton and Bard, and just in this area, actually, if you have that diploma, will give you 1 full year of college credit for graduating high school with an IB diploma, which is very impressive, and I think that speaks to the rigor. Additionally, as I said earlier, it's not for all students, but all students at Putnam Valley High School have access to IB courses. So you don't necessarily have to pursue the diploma, but certainly you can access these courses. They have a wide range. We heard that they're expanding their course offerings, and everything from science and literature. Also, they're looking at dance for next school year. It was quite impressive, as David said. I will add, it is a very beautiful facility. It's fairly new. I think it was built in 2020. The high school was open.
2010.
In 2010? I'm sorry, excuse me. No, sorry, in 2000. Excuse me. I said 20. In 2000, thank you for correcting me. So it's only 20 years old, or 22 years old. But the facility is really impressive. They have a wonderful athletics program. A lot of extracurricular. They have a TV studio, maker spaces we saw, music program was thriving, theater program as well. So, it is a larger school, I think about 550 students, and they said they certainly would welcome Garrison students there.
But Carl, as the educator, as the professional educator that you are, how would you explain from the standpoint of the student what the experience of being a student in the school is like? How is it different from what you see in other high schools?
Well, what I gleaned from our conversations with them and from other colleagues that I know that are involved with IB programs in their districts, basically there is much more student choice. So where a Regents course or an AP course really is geared towards that culminating exam and having your students, perform well on that exam. In an IB course, the students have choice. They can pursue an area of interest to research, and it's 20% of their grade, but the assessments are based on not just, multiple choice or short answer or essay responses. There are videos that they create. There's a TV production studio, so that is one. Film study is one of the IB courses that they offer. But you're actually producing, it's project-based learning, it's student choice, and the interesting thing is that their student motivation, according to them, has increased pretty dramatically as they transitioned over to IB. And they have data to support that. For example, in their library media center, the research that is being done in some cases has gone up 4 or 5 times. They also report that seniors, what's typical in a lot of high schools is after they get accepted into college, they tend to ease up a bit and enjoy senior year. But here at Putt Valley, you see the seniors continuing to challenge themselves and take challenging courses, even when they've already been accepted into a college. So I think there's a motivation, and I think it's attributable to the choice and the rigor and some of the things that we saw there, David. So I have never been in a district where I oversaw an IB program, so I'm not an expert in it, but I agree with you, it was quite impressive.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to learning more about it. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the tour. Sounds perfect. There have to be some drawbacks to an IB education, I'm guessing. You mentioned Bard and Binghamton take it as a year credit. Does every college take the same view of a non-Regents, non-AP structured curriculum, or is it kind of a...
Every college has a different approach. So there's a great resource on their website for one of their guidance counselors put together of how every college across the country and international, because it does draw international attention because it's an international program. That's one thing they pointed out, is that more of their students are applying to international schools because of the program. So if you go on their website, you can see under the IB program, like every college, whether they take, you need to get a 6 on the IB exam to get the credit for it. Similar to AP. Now, I will say that compared to some of our other high school partners, they offer less APs. Like Haldane does offer more AP classes because they don't have the IB program. So with everything, this is one of the reasons why I think choice is so valuable, is because there's going to be plus and, minuses to every school. You say it sounds perfect. Well, it's a very rigorous, it's a very rigorous academic program. It's not for everyone. All of our students, I think, are looking for different things. Like I know some of our students are very excited about the ROTC program over at O'Neill, and that's a draw. That's not offered at other partners. Many students have a strong connection to Haldane. They've been playing sports, as you know, they've been playing sports together forever with these kids. Their siblings have gone there. It's literally up the road. So, and it does offer a different type of curriculum, I think. There are APs at Putt Valley as well, but you can't have everything.
Right. No, I was...
Yeah. But I think it's important to show that, there's a lot of different things. But I know, for this conversation, for those of you who weren't able to go on the tour, if you have questions about Putt Valley or thoughts on what they offer, what all the schools offer,
They're having a meeting on Monday night that's open to anybody. And I think a lot of folks from here who are facing this decision about their kids' high school are welcome to come on
attend.
Monday night at Putnam Valley High School.
Oh, so that one's on
Thursday night.
And Monday night is our 8th
Oh,
grade.
you're right. I got it wrong. That's right. It was Thursday.
October 20th.
Perhaps we could share that and maybe see who of our parents would be interested in attending when we do, because we are having a 8th grade parent meeting on, that one's Monday night and then the next.
The only thing is, PTA would remind us that it's trivia
Trivia
night,
night.
Thursday night.
So send one parent maybe, don't send both, so you can go to trivia night as well with the PTA.
Court, do you want to add to that, any of that?
I think honestly you covered it really well. I was similarly impressed The facility is beautiful. Don't we all wish to go to a 20-year-old school? They've built a new wing during COVID that is an indoor turf field and track, complete with batting cages and lacrosse nets and all of that. So that's it's very impressive. I really like to hear how they were thinking about the whole child, the whole student, recognizing, they created something called community lunch, and the whole high school goes to lunch at the same time, and they're all on campus, and they basically have freedom throughout the entire school. So there were kids tossing around a football on this turf field, and other kids sitting in the hallway, and other kids working in the library. So it was, it was just clearly the students took a lot of pride in their school. And then speaking to the IB program, the other thing that I really liked was that they really emphasized the fact that all the students could take IB classes. You don't have to be on the IB track to get the diploma because, as everyone said, it's an extremely rigorous program. It isn't for everybody, but that there are benefits for all the students, and the teachings and the cultures are influencing all of the educators in the building. So it was really inspiring.
How long is the drive from here?
We drove from the school, because we all drove together, and it was 20 to 25 minutes. It's one of those weird things where it's not that far away, you just have to take all the,
It's over the river and through the woods.
yeah.
You have to go south and then back north.
Yeah.
It's 10 miles from door to door from our school to the high school.
I think that's a good question that would lead into, how does this impact transportation? Because clearly, transportation is one of our biggest line items on the budget, and if we are looking to perhaps offer a third option long-term, what does that do to our transportation? So, Joe?
Yes, so what we can say about the transportation is there's a very difference in start and finish time with that high school versus the other two. So potentially on the afternoon run, we could have the high school students from Putnam Valley back in time to be on an elementary bus to go home. So that may work, but in the morning, the time is sufficiently different that either if they get picked up with the rest of the high school kids, they're going to be waiting somewhere, or depending upon how many students would pick that option in the first year, we would potentially have to have a separate bus run for those kids. So there is a potential for added expense based upon what we know currently.
And if it's a small group to start, is there a possibility to just like run a van from here with our staff and our equipment? Because obviously we won't have 4 years of students.
Right. So it would depend a lot on how many students select. We do have vans and some smaller things that if it was just a handful of students, we could do that. Yes.
Does anyone else have any transportation questions while we're on that topic regarding this? And we did ask them when I was on the tour, I know we divided it up, if they could accept our students early, and they do open for breakfast, so the kids would be welcome to come in, have breakfast there, go to the.
How early is early?
So they don't start class until 7:50. What time would we get them there?
So we have our students come to Garrison, and then they get put on a Haldane bus or an O'Neill bus. Those buses arrive at 6:50. So if it takes 20 minutes to get over there, you're looking at 10 minutes after 7. So that's pretty early. So it would depend on
Haldane kids are getting this Haldane at 7:05 for a 7:30 start?
they can, yes.
Is
Because
that-
it goes off of the earliest start time, because we have to get
Yeah.
the students here in time to send them to O'Neill.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No problem.
No. We should know exactly when, when they're. Yeah, so there would be a drawback there, although we do have families in the Garrison School District who technically live in Putnam Valley and have been assigned our school district. So for them, it may be closer. I haven't looked specifically at a map to see, but.
And it would also depend upon how many students elect to take transportation. There's a lot of high school students that don't, you know. So it would depend a lot on how many chose it and how many want to have the transportation through Garrison.
Probably getting too into the weeds, but let's say there are 3 kids who elect Putnam Valley who are going to get dropped off. I know some kids who take the high school bus just get dropped off here at Garrison in the morning rather than catch the bus by their house. If we're going to arrange a van, could that van possibly depart later? Or like they all
Yes.
set out at 7:20 instead, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
we could work that out. It's all going to depend on what the parents want. And, you know, there is obviously a lot of literature and a lot of support behind a later start time. So, you know, there's an advantage to that for students, especially high school and middle school age, to be sleeping more in the morning. So some parents may want us to do it that way. And, you know, first at the beginning, it would definitely work. You know, if there's only a handful of students, that would work. I mean, if you're picking up 3 or 4 students, you could just pick them all up at their houses and drive over there. You know, I mean, it depends on a lot.
Right.
But as far as the end time, with their dismissal time and when our elementary dismisses, it would work to get them on the elementary buses.
But in theory, they're not really spending that much more time at Putnam Valley if they left here at the same time as the kids are spending at Haldane right now.
Not really.
Because it's going to take 25, probably 30 minutes to get down there just with traffic in the mornings. I mean, I would imagine. So it's not that big a difference. It's not that big a wait.
Yeah. What is so if we do need to add a bus run, though, that does add, the bus runs are currently, we're looking at a $30,000?
If
Per
we had to have Orange County do it,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. So that's
But
something to
that-
keep
But
in mind.
it's depending on how many students, that may not be required, you know.
Yeah.
It just
That would
where
be,
they-
I'm looking at worst case, you know, highest level of what would the impact be on that?
Because you would need a vehicle and an operator for the morning.
Yeah.
Just to add something else about it, I think this is speaking for both Carl and for
Oh,
Courtney.
get closer to your
Oh,
microphone,
sorry.
I think.
I think what really struck us, Putnam Valley is not a particularly wealthy community. It's not a fancy Westchester suburb. This school is really beautiful, and they have not had a problem getting budgets passed. And the superintendent there, I asked him about this, and he said there's a real community pride in this, in the specialness of this school. And you really get a sense of that. I mean, it's beautiful. And, you know, there's no commercial base in Putnam Valley. I mean, it's residential. They've had somewhat of one of the nice things about the school is that there's much more diversity, ethnic diversity in the school. There's been a large number of Latino folks who have moved in there. In the last couple of years, they've had about 250 new families, I think he said. But I just was really struck by this is like a community institution that clearly there's a tremendous amount of pride in, and that is justified.
And I will say, the campus is different in many ways from the other two because feels removed. It's a very much a campus, whereas I know our students at Haldane are able to walk to town, they're able to go get pizza at lunch, and they have a different type of experience in that way, where they're pretty much in town. This is not in town, to be clear. It's sort of a big campus with a hiking trail
There
around
ain't much
it.
of a town, right? I mean,
Yeah, I don't know Putt Valley as well in terms of that, but yeah, there's no town near this school. It's very, it's sort of set apart, would be the best way to describe it. Before we go, I know we've talked a lot about Putt Valley because it is the new option that we haven't discussed publicly before, and I certainly would encourage our community to bring questions, specifically our eighth grade parents, for Monday night, and I'd love to hear some thoughts. But I do want to spend some time talking, Kent, about the board meeting with Haldane last night, because they have been our partner for, what is it, what did we figure out, 100 years?
So, yeah, I had the fortune to speak to the Haldane board last night and have a good conversation. There's the pride David mentions in Putnam Valley. That pride is definitely in Cold Spring and in Garrison for Haldane. We've been together forever. I personally know board members at Haldane as well as I know you all. I'm with them much more often due to the kids' sports. So there's a warm community there, great community bonds. They don't view our students as Garrison students, they view them as Haldane students. And that was very clear through the conversation how important we are to them. And so I'm very confident and optimistic that we will work out a situation that works for both parties there. Again, I'd like to welcome Sean O'Neill, Haldane's board president, who's here tonight, and thank him again for the hospitality last night. But just emphasizing again, we are tremendously important to them, and that was very clear in last night's discussion. And really, at the end of the day, as I said last night, Garrison kids going to Haldane is really good for Garrison. It's really good for Haldane. It's good for our entire town, and it's just not something that any of us take lightly. So, again, they've been a great partner for a number of years, and I look forward to continuing that partnership.
And just to, speak to the timeline on that discussions, we're very hopeful we will have a rate for our students by, I believe, the end of the month. So to keep that date in mind, we're really hopeful that we'll see that. And we have had ongoing communication with their board and their superintendent. I know Carl's spoken to Phil quite a bit. So the channels of communication are definitely there, and they're very receptive. So
Just to understand, what are our options, really? We have 3 options, but can we have all 3 options, or really we should look at keeping only 2 options? What's the timeline? And is there a comparison between the schools if we need to narrow it down to 2 options to understand the teacher, student ratio, the overall rating for the schools, and the additional cost of any to the budget, depending if we have to narrow it down to 2 options instead of the 3?
Madeline, please, other board members, give your opinions on this. But my judgment is that maintain 3 options. As Ken said, and I've been speaking with Phil Benante regularly, we are optimistic. We have a tremendous respect and value of the relationship that was said, it goes back well over 100 years. But I think adding a 3rd option would be something really positive for Garrison students. I think all 3, and I've been in all 3 schools, they're all wonderful in their own way. And I think they offer some different experiences. And one school may be right for a particular student. Sarah mentioned ROTC, which I believe is only offered at O'Neill. But I think, there would be something for everyone because they are all a bit different, but all high-level programs and high schools. I think the consideration is, as Joe points out, there is a potential $30,000 expense of an additional morning bus run. So that is something that we need to consider. But wow, to be able to offer our students, the 3 choices, I think would be great for our community, great for our students. So that's my own opinion. And again, I've multiple times been in all 3, and I think they're all equally as impressive, but in different ways, if that makes sense.
to speak to the timeline, we do have a tentative tour date for Haldane for students to tour. We would be, should the board wish to move forward and the community be receptive, we would look to set up a date with Putt Valley, and we have a tour scheduled for O'Neill. All of that would look to happen in November. Choice would then happen in December, because we owe our high schools per the contracts, or at least the 2 contracts we have in place with Haldane and O'Neill, the number of students they are receiving by, is it January 3rd or something close to that?
Yeah, our contract says January 2nd that we will let our partnering high schools know how many students we are sending there in September.
And that will help all of us budget effectively going forward.
I just want to point out, if we choose to add Putt Valley, no matter what happens with Haldane, we will have 3 high schools for the next 3 years.
Yes.
3 high schools for the next 3 years.
Yes.
Because we do have contract with Haldane. Our current students at Haldane are not under an obligation to leave should we choose to add Putt Valley and not come to an agreement for next year's class with Haldane. So just make that
That's-
clear to the community.
Yes, that is true. That's a good point. Matt, go ahead, then Madeline. Who wants to go first?
Go ahead.
So adding the third option, will it hurt O'Neill and Haldane at all? And is that something that we should really?
That's what I was going to ask.
Oh,
'Cause we're talking about valuing the relationship,
Yes.
but would this affect the relationship?
It would, one of the things I like is that it preserves, should we not come to an agreement, preserves high school choice. I'm confident we will, but I think, yes, it could receive less students. However, our student count varies year to year anyway. For example, we've had classes graduate of 13. Currently, we're running much higher in our class count. Last year, we graduated close to, what is it, 28? 29 students. This, we're in the 20s right now in all of our middle school classes, so we're going to be sending more kids to high school.
We're going to be at 90 in 24, 25 overall, and we were at, I believe, 60 last year, 60-ish.
Mid-60s, I believe.
So that has precipitated this entire need for having a locked-in rate with our high school partners, as you all know. Not only was the tuition an issue, and rising tuition, unpredictable tuition, but the fact is we're going to have 30% more students in high school in the next few years. So, yes, regardless of whether we go to 3, these schools will see similar numbers for the next few years.
And our kindergarten class is exceptionally large.
We've never made any promises of a minimum number of students to the high schools. It is the student's choice, it is a family choice, and there are some years where, 3/4 of the 8th grade choose to go to one school because peer pressure, and 2 go to the other, and then the next year it flip-flops. So there's no guarantees, we're not about anything, but generally over time, it tends to spread out fairly evenly.
There's 2 planes of that relationship, though, because there's the individual family choice, but then there's the kind of broader community statement. So this is a bit, I feel like we're underplaying the significance of this conversation. I feel like we're talking about it on the plane of sort of individual student choice without engaging the community ramifications that are equally important, I think, to a lot of people.
Go ahead with that. Say more about that.
I mean, we have a 100-year relationship. We have a sense of community. Haldane, Cold Spring, Garrison. A lot of people in Garrison think of Cold Spring as their downtown. The theater festival is, here. I don't think people in Cold Spring would consider that to not be their turf. And there's just a sense of a relationship and a community. So this is I don't know I can't predict the cultural or community ramifications in terms of, when I say cultural, I don't mean in a larger sense. I just mean on 9D. I don't know how it would affect that dynamic. That's all.
You're absolutely right. And this is what I spoke about last night at Haldane. We are 2 communities, but we are one community. So if our children participate in activities as children, they're participating with kids who go to Haldane. We're intrinsically tied. Cold Spring and Garrison are Phillipstown. We make up Phillipstown. So you're right, Matt, to not acknowledge that, to think that if we were to walk away from Haldane and not have a high school choice with Haldane, that would be something that wouldn't impact this community is very much wrong. That will be a tremendous impact and devastating to a lot of families. So I absolutely agree with you. It's something we need to take very seriously, and it's why that's why I spent a long time with them last night. We've had great discussions. That's why we want to continue to work with them to find something that works, because it's really important.
I will say, I mean, I think it's also worth recognizing how we ended up here too, is that, with the rate increase, I went back and looked today at sort of where the NRT rate was and what we have paid to Haldane year over year. And just for some reference, for example, if you go back to 17-18, our rate with Haldane was $13,223, and the NRT rate was $15,264. That year, we paid O'Neill $12,000, about $300, so we were paying O'Neill less at that point. The rates, the NRT rate and what we paid Haldane were closer in those years. The NRT rate has now gone up, and our rate had stayed the same. So I do think it was reasonable on Haldane's part to ask for an adjustment. It's just about what we can really afford to go up to their full NRT rate, which, Joe, help me out here. Their current NRT rate is $20,400 for this year and estimated to go up for next year. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the estimated rate is published every December, and the current estimated rate for the year that we just finished, because that's the estimated rate, was $20,450, and it's actually based the final rate is based upon your state aid claim that you file after you close your books, and it is published in December. So we won't know the actual 21-22 rate, NRT rate, until December, but we anticipate it would increase based upon spending.
I also just want to point out just one last thing about the community and the partnership, that when we were up against the wall last year, when we had to figure out a way to get our override passed, a lot of people chipped in, our administration, our teachers, to help us get to that number that we could pass, but as big as anyone else was Haldane. So I want to again remind everyone, they've been a great partner of ours, and I will expect them to continue to be the same. But
I agree on that. What does make me nervous is we don't currently have a rate, and we do not have, if we can't pay, we can't pay. So as much as we want to talk about how great the two communities are, we fundamentally cannot raise the money to pay them unless we make dramatic cuts to our K-8 program. And we're already running one section of almost everything with 25, 26 kids. There's not much space to cut in this K-8 building. And I would worry about passing a budget to send a few kids to Haldane that impacts all of our students here when we have another partner who is willing to come in at a lower rate. So that's a practical concern. I do hear the community aspect of it, but I want to make sure we keep coming back to that practical aspect, because it's really why we started looking and why we're in this position. And we're going to be talking about the budget all year in relation to almost everything, but it is key to this. It's not that we don't think they're worth $20,000. I mean, what is Putt Valley's NRT rate? They're 20.
Well, the estimated one for the 21-22 is $22,240.
Is what?
$22,240.
22,240. So, they have a higher NRT rate. I'm sure they're worth it too. We just can't pay that based on our budget and the increase in the number of students we're sending. And we appreciate all of the high schools that we're looking at really trying to work with us on this, because, Ken, I think you made this point in your speech last night that the tax levy isn't going to dramatically increase overnight. Asking us to make that lift, we made it once and we got to a 6.6 increase. we're not going to see that again. And we also realistically can't go up even that much higher, I don't think. So, plus, of course, inflation.
Even if we, my view is this, even if we arrange something financially with Haldane to everyone's satisfaction, it would not change my view that this option should be made available to our students. I agree with you and with Matt about the community partnership that exists between us and Cold Spring and Haldane that does not exist between us and Putt Valley. If Haldane had a program that was equivalent to this international baccalaureate program at Putt Valley, I wouldn't think it wouldn't be, from my perspective, it wouldn't be necessary to pursue that as a third option. I think I can't see depriving our kids. That is a unique program. I think it's what high school education is going to look like 5-10 years from now. I don't know why O'Neill or Haldane has chosen to ignore that model. Maybe they have good reasons for not doing it. But I know that as a parent, I would want my kid to have the option of having that kind of an education. I think that I think that people who might be thinking of sending their kids to Masters or Hackley in this community, if they were familiar with what they're doing at Putt Valley, wouldn't bother with private schools. I think it's that unique and that different.
David, you raised an interesting point also, just, I think the board is aware of this. In the past, we did have more eighth grade students moving on to independent schools, but that trend has been going down where, we're seeing maybe, 2 of the graduating class moving on to independent, but I tend to agree with David based on what I saw. That number could potentially go to 0 because, it's offering something different and something very valuable. So.
I'll come back to Courtney's point, too, that it's really about what the students choose when they go on the tours. They go on these tours, and they're looking for something, and it really, I think, it depends on if they're inspired by the school they see that day sometimes, which is why, we did make it clear, at least when Carla and I were at Putt Valley, that they may not see a lot of our students in year 1, year 2, it's really the student's choice. And a lot of kids feel and families feel a strong pull to our 2 other options currently. Some of that siblings, parents went to these schools, things like that as well.
Well, it's also, like I mentioned, it's the community.
Yeah.
I mean, our kids, I just went to a soccer game. They're playing with Haldane kids right now. They walk into that school. They know kids. They know the community. They've been playing with them since they were 3 years old at Phillipstown Rec. So I don't disagree with anything anyone's saying about Putnam Valley. It sounds like a wonderful place. I'm looking forward to learning more. I just think we need to not forget about our partnership with Haldane. We need to keep that in mind and remember how important it is. It's not something that if we walk away from will not have an impact.
Just one other thought, too, kind of following up on Kent's comments. I think even if the board decided to go with 3 options, Haldane will, I think, always have, kind of like the home field advantage. We cannot do mergers with all 3 districts, and the other 2 districts are larger. So it's mutually beneficial for us to merge with Haldane, because together we
You're talking
can.
about modified sports right now.
Modified sports, yes. But that's where a lot of the bonds form. Our students are competing together, their friendships, and relationships are there. So, I think it probably is likely that even if you went with 3 options, the majority of our students would still choose Haldane, which is great. But again, you have these, unique programs in the other districts that I think could be a good offering as well. So, Matt?
Why has this never come up before?
It has. But I will point out that we haven't been in the financial situation we are in currently, which I think is really the driving factor here, of that we need certain terms. We can't just pay what anyone wants us to pay without having serious impacts on the rest of our program. Also, the program they're offering now didn't exist 5-6 years ago. This IB program is new, so it would have looked a little different, perhaps. I mean, clearly, this is a newer board. We weren't on it, but it would have looked different when you were looking at that option, if that was the third option you were looking at. Any other options, I believe, Joe, would be too far and too expensive to bus to. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it's once you start getting further away, if you're 40 minutes away or something like that, it's just it becomes not a workable solution.
Okay. So I think that's part of it, and I think we're pushed by some real financial challenges, which has brought us to this point of how do we solve it and still offer our children a choice for high school, and stay within what we can afford for tuition and special ed for our high school students specifically. So I think unless we have other comments, I'd like to not spend the whole night here because we have other things on our agenda. But to wrap this up, basically, if you have questions that are unanswered by this, or is there something you'd like to know more about, please reach out to Carl. So this is an ongoing discussion. Obviously, it's going to move quickly because we want to hopefully figure out what we can offer our students in a timely manner to meet our contractual obligations and to set them up for high school next year. But so get your questions in. If there's something you want to see, another tour you want to go on, please let everyone know. Yeah.
So when will they go out to vote to add this third option? When for the board?
Well, if you're talking about a 5-year contract, we could put that on the ballot in the spring. Our board can approve a 1-year agreement or up to 364 days. So that would be up to us to approve the agreement. And it would be once we as a board reach a consensus on it and are happy with the terms that we are discussing.
But it will have to be sometime in
It
November
would
for
have
the
to be
1 year.
very soon,
Okay.
yeah. So that's something to thank you. That's something to consider as well. And then again, I'd love to hear feedback from our community. We do have that parent night coming up on the 7th, but that's just for 8th graders. I would welcome feedback from the rest of the community as well as to their thoughts on this. Because it's not made in a vacuum, while also hopefully recognizing the financial challenges of what we're facing. So we don't have time to be in a place where it's like, well, I really want this, and if we can't afford it, we can't afford it. We went up against that last year, so. Any other final thoughts before I move us on? Anybody? Okay. Comfortable with any of there? Great. Okay. Next up, we have public comment. Public comment is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns. In accordance with Policy 1510 of the Garrison Union Free School District, any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comments about specific school personnel or individual students is a violation of board policy. Concerns regarding students or personnel should be discussed privately with the superintendent or appropriate administrator. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. The board will listen to comments but will not engage in dialogue. Any necessary follow-up will be noted and provided through the appropriate channel. Members of the public wishing to comment during board meetings are asked to place their name and town of residence on the sign-in sheet. Commenters will be invited to the podium to address the board. Anybody? Okay. Thank you. All right, now we're going to get to the exciting part. We'd like to talk about accepting the minutes. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the minutes of the regular meeting of September 21st, 2022 as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Seconded.
Does anybody have any questions or thoughts on the minutes as presented? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. All right, next we move on to committee reports. Jocelyn, I'm going to go to you for DEI.
We met last week via Zoom, and we have one new community member because we lost 3 community members due to just the new school year and lots of schedule changes. So happy to welcome Enrica Halen. And we really highlighted 3 initiatives that we're really focusing on for this year, which is the book audit / equity walk that I think is, Carl, you're working on finding consultants for assisting us with that. I'm blanking on the second one, and then maybe something that is related to like a community read, like a one school, one book initiative that might, that a couple of committee members are exploring and might end up trying to do it later in the spring or sometime this year, or maybe over the winter. Courtney, what was the second, what the heck is it, the book?
There were 3. No, I got stuck on community read.
It was fun.
It was a good meeting.
Any questions?
All right, thank you.
Oh, I remember. It was the Bridges program.
Oh, the Bridges
Yeah,
program.
That,
Great.
that Maura Shanks and Krista Di Diego are working on.
That's great. And we're looking to partner with O'Neill on that. Is that correct, Carl?
Yes, in fact, I spoke with the superintendent today, and we're going to connect our middle school advisors and principals and staffs, and they'll begin the planning. It's very exciting.
Also, what happened?
There was, Madeline, we thought it would be more practical with O'Neill because we already run transportation. In light of some of the budget challenges, to add transportation to Peekskill would have been an added expense. So there, we think we already have that partnership with O'Neill, and we thought it would be a good fit for us.
All right, next up is Audit Committee. We met right before this meeting. It was just as entertaining as everyone thought it would be. Love the audit. I know, it's so fun. The auditors will be back to present to the full board. Is it the end of this month, or are we pushing that into early November? The end of this month. I think one of the key things is that they recognize our challenges as well. They appreciated Joe's close budgeting, but we will be looking at fund balance with them as well, which I think will be helpful not only for the full board, but also for the public. And I would hope that everyone mark their calendar and attend the audit presentation. It's so great. I love reading audit presentations. I think I'm joking, but I read them for everyone's districts. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have drafts that we will hand out to the full board. So that way, if you have any questions over the next couple of weeks, please ask them. We'll make sure that they get answered. We anticipate that the draft is very close to what the final report is going to be. One of the items that is on the agenda for tonight is to accept budget transfers that are required as a result of some adjusting entries that the auditor made. And once those things are done, there's some small adjustments to the report, but it's substantial. It will be substantially to what I'm going to hand out tonight. So that way, we wanted to do it this way so that the board had plenty of time to review it, and if they have questions over the next couple of weeks, we're able to answer them, and there'll be a abridged presentation for the next board meeting.
Thank you, Jocelyn. I forgot about that. Appreciate that. Okay, thanks, Joe. It'll be great. All right. Next, we have CSE Cpsc Recommendations. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approve the Committee on Special Education, CSE, and the Committee on Preschool Special Education, CPSE, recommendations and student placements. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Okay. Next, I will move on to the Personnel Consent Agenda. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, does hereby approve the items of the Personnel Consent Agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please? So moved.
Second.
Carl, do you want to speak to these items specifically? Let's start with the teacher aide.
Sure. The aide appointment is for the pre-K program. It is required to have an aide with that program. Joe and I have completed the application for funding. So this will be funded by pre-K funding. The reason why we're appointing an aide now in October, the program did have an aide from the beginning, but the person was initially appointed as a substitute aide. She's done a wonderful job. She's studying to become an occupational therapist. She's about 2 years away from her degree, so she would stay with us for at least a few years. And she's done great work in the first 6 weeks. She just seems to be a natural and is wonderful with our 4-year-olds. So that is why, we decided to recommend her to officially be appointed as an aide. Victoria DeRazio is the candidate. Also on the personnel agenda is a substitute nurse. This is a community member, Caitlin Hayes. It is very, very challenging to find substitute nurses. Fortunately, her full-time job is on a later shift, so if there is a need here and our nurse is out, we would have coverage. And the last one, Sarah, you'll take that
I
one?
do want to, before we move on to that, though, regarding the teacher's aide, I want to clarify that we had 5 teacher's aides in the budget, and this will keep us at 5 teacher's aides in the budget. Every other position where we have maybe a temporary one is a substitute, but this is 5 teacher's aides
Yes, and then additionally, we have 1 monitor.
and a monitor.
And a monitor that is in the budget, but it did go up by 1. The original budget back in May, after the board decided to implement pre-K, it did go up by 1,
Okay.
just to be clear.
Just to kind of follow up a little bit on that. So when we completed our pre-K grant application, there's an allocation based upon the number of students that we have in the program. We submitted the application with startup expenses and personnel expenses. The personnel expenses that we put towards the grant are in excess of the salary for this position. So we do have it covered, provided the grant is approved. We believe we have everything in place and have a good grant application on file, but that's what it is.
Any other questions? Okay. So I will move on to the approval to affirm the agreement for the superintendent's contract. So what this is, as you all are aware, we froze all of our administrators' salaries as part of this budget. We updated the contracts for our building principal, business administrator, and other administrators in July because we negotiated an increase in healthcare for them to contribute a higher amount to their healthcare in addition to freezing their salaries, which we greatly appreciate. So their contracts were done in July. Our superintendent's contract was not done at the same time as he does not take healthcare from our district. So this does not change his pay. It remains frozen. But in order for him to enter into the pension system, we need this resolution, and we would like him to be able to get his pension and retirement at some point. We're not going to let him retire anytime soon. So if anyone has any questions on that, please let me know. All right, does that make it clear? I hope I explained that well. Okay. All right, so that's it. If anyone has without other questions, move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Next, we have approval of new business items. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, does hereby approve the new business items as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Okay. Carl, do you wish to speak to these?
Sure, I'll take a few, and then Joe, you could take the business ones. Earlier, we appointed a per diem substitute nurse, but we needed to establish a rate of $125 a day. So that is one of them. The transportation agreement, Joe, would you like to take that?
Yes, so if there is an opportunity for us to split a transportation run for a special education student or for some other purpose, it is helpful to have a agreement in place that will establish us to have students on the same bus. It's important to have these contractual items in place so everyone is covered for insurance for liability purposes. And if there's an opportunity for both districts to save money, we want to take that opportunity.
I have questions for Joe. I'm going to turn it over to Courtney next, or Carl. All right. Courtney, do you want to speak to the adopt revised policies and the abolish policy 5150?
It's really just a follow-up from my policy committee update from 2 weeks ago, through whenever we met. Policy committee met and to go over suggested changes that Erie One BOCES provides on a monthly and quarterly basis that then Dusty miraculously collaborates all of it and gives us all the information. So these are just all the updated policies, basically following Erie One BOCES recommendations and our own legal counsel.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? All right, and we also have a budget transfer.
Yes, so I'll cover the last two items. So as we spoke a little bit about before, as the audit was being conducted, the auditors recommended some different classification of some expenditures, and those classifications put some expenditure categories as overexpended, and this as a result of their adjustments. So this corrects those adjustments and balances those out for the year just finished. That's what they're for. And the last item is we have some defibrillators that after a point in time when manufacturers no longer support defibrillators for the pads and the batteries, we have to replace them. So we have replaced these defibrillators already. We can no longer get the single-use pads or the batteries for them, so they're being obsoleted.
Any questions on the budget transfer or the defibrillators? Right?
I do have a question on the budget transfer, and it's just so I can understand it a little bit more. So the column on the right are the items that are being transferred from that WBS code and are being transferred to the column on the left, right? Another WBS code that,
So actually, the transfer is out. So we're transferring out of repairs and then into the columns on the left. Yep.
for example, the diesel fuel, $10,000 was transferred out of that and went into,
Into the
Where?
combination of the four above. Yep.
okay, oh, okay. And this is recommended by the auditors?
Yeah. Well, so in order to make the accounts on the top not in the negative, which means that they were spent over the budgeted amount, they needed to have transfers in from things that we didn't expend. Now, when we finished our accounting at the end of the year, those accounts were not in the negative, but the auditors recommended adjusting entries put them in the negative. So that's what this is correcting those.
Oh, thank you, understand. So it's to balance out all of the codes based on projections made early on.
Well, it's actually to balance out the codes so that you have no expenditures over the adjusted amounts for the close of the year that we just finished.
Okay.
And the adjustments that the auditors made made the top 4, 5 accounts in the negative. So this corrects those with amounts unexpended from the codes at the bottom.
So we had an extra $10,000 under the fuel,
That we
diesel
transferred
fuel
into
that we
those
could
other things.
transfer into special aid fund that needed that. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Oh, that's all right. we got this in audit first, so I kind of had a primer, we had a primer on this one too. All right. Any other questions? I'm going to go ahead and move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. I'm going to move on to the second public comment of the evening. I'm not going to read my paragraph again. Okay. Now I'm going to move on to board member comment and other discussion. I'm going to go to Jocelyn first. Okay. David? Okay. Madeline?
No comment.
Courtney?
Nope.
Okay. Kent?
I just want to give a word of appreciation to the PTA for setting up the Fall Fest this week and the trivia contest. It's really nice to have school back to normal and feel like it's a regular year with great things going on and activities outside the building and parents in the building, and it's just really nice to see.
Matt?
Second that, no comment.
Okay. I will just add that it is Board of Education recognition. However, we had some students who wished to, so I don't want you to think you guys are being ignored, but we do have some students who wish to present to us, and they were unavailable tonight, so they're going to come to the next meeting. So be ready, it'll be exciting, and they'll come appreciate us.
Is the next meeting also showing off the Learning Commons?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. We're
Didn't
at-
want to say that if that was not correct.
At 6 p.m., we'll be doing a ribbon-cutting celebration of the Learning Commons. So the official grand opening, and we have PTA has been invited, GSEF has been invited, and really all the community is welcome. Also, our teachers were invited. So should be an exciting evening.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding us. All right. With that, we're going to go to executive session. Be resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby enters into executive session for the purpose of discussing term of instruction contracts for Garrison students attending high school. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Okay, we will adjourn the meeting without any further action being taken. Please shut down and log out of your computers. Thank you very much for your time this evening.